Thank you, Skylar. I want to thank Skylar and Gabby and Matt and Jeff and all of you all for coming here today and for caring about cannabis, caring about hemp, and prohibition. So why am I here? I'm here basically because of reefer madness. For the last 70 years, our government has waged a campaign vilifying the cannabis plant. And they've paid the media off millions and millions of dollars to spout their rhetoric. You've probably heard of the Just Say No campaign that Nancy Reagan came up with, the This Is Your Brain on Drugs campaign, all of these different things. They have just bombarded society with this information. So people are so brainwashed against cannabis, against marijuana, that they hate it. There's people that just immediately say no anytime you say anything about marijuana. So they just waged this incredible campaign, and they've stigmatized cannabis users. They've made people that use marijuana, they make them look like bad people, lazy bums. They characterize them in all sorts of negative ways. And if this was all they did, that would be bad enough. But they've made marijuana illegal, and they've arrested millions of people over the last 30 years for cannabis. So this entire prison industrial complex has been created based on prohibition, which leads to gang violence. Thousands of people are killed every year fighting over the profits made from selling drugs. It's incredible. Mexico has a lot of violence, but also our inner cities and cities throughout the country have a lot of violence related to drugs. So it's just really sad and horrible, and a lot of people are in prison. I know some people in prison for drugs, and it just breaks my heart, and I just can't stand it. And our government won't even they lie about medical marijuana. They say marijuana has no medicinal value, so you can't do any research. So it's just pathetic what they do, and they won't even let our farmers grow hemp, a plant that has absolutely no psychoactive properties. They won't even let our farmers grow hemp. So all of these things together, this is reefer madness, and this is why I'm here. So what we need to do is turn reefer madness into reefer gladness. We need to show all the good things about marijuana and cannabis. You guys are in on the secret. The fact that you're here means you care. And we are the tip of the spear. We're the very beginning of this social movement that's going to be huge, and it's going to change society. But we're going to be here. We're creating history. We're creating history right now. And so it's amazing. But there's so many different things. So we need to talk about all the great things about cannabis. We need to, instead of preaching to the choir, I want to preach to the preachers. I want you all to go out and let people know how great cannabis is and how bad prohibition is. So a lot of you are students, if not most of you. So you're in class, you've got all these different term papers, projects, research efforts. Why not study cannabis, hemp, or prohibition? If you have your choice of writing a paper or doing a project, try to apply it to prohibition, to cannabis. And there's an infinite number of subjects to choose from. And if you're a graduate student or if you're a researcher, apply for a grant and get our government to pay for your research into cannabis. That would be tremendous to have the government pay for cannabis research. So there's all sorts of subjects to choose from, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of subjects today. And as Skylar mentioned, there's going to be a symposium in the spring. So if you want to give a 5 to 10 minute presentation, a real short presentation about a paper or a project that you're doing now, you can give that presentation in the spring, and it's a good way to get up, practice your presentation skills, and learn more about it. And so this is how we're going to unbrainwash society. They've had 70 years of reefer madness, but this is what we're going to do. This is you at the bottom. You study cannabis, hemp, or prohibition. What you do, and you learn something, so that's great. But then you talk to your friends, so you let them know. You talk to your teachers, because a lot of teachers don't realize all the great things about cannabis, and they don't realize how bad prohibition is. So you educate them. Talk to your parents. So we're going to educate our way up. And then at the top of this is the clearinghouse, the Cannabis Curriculum Clearinghouse, where eventually I hope to create this online database of research efforts. People can send me all their papers and research, and it's going to be this huge database that other people can access when they're doing their research. So it's going to be a lot of great things to happen, a lot of great things going to do, and so we'll kick it off. But one thing we need to sort of understand is the physiology of cannabis. So we have marijuana is the flower of the cannabis plant, which you probably are familiar with. and it has 8 to 20% THC, and it's good for all sorts of things, stress relief, for medical properties. Some people use it in their religion, some people just use it to have fun or for inspiration. And then you have hemp, which by law in Canada, the flowers have to have less than 0.3% THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol. So you cannot get high from smoking hemp, but you can make all sorts of great products out of it. You know, food, skincare products, plastic, car parts, fuel. Just amazing, all the different things. But they are both cannabis sativa. They're both the same cannabis plant. That's very important to realize, to understand. So that we're talking about the same plant. We're going to start talking about hemp. Hemp has been used for thousands of years by almost every civilization on Earth. It originated in China. It made its way across Asia, through Africa, Europe, into the Americas. So it's been used for thousands of years, but if you wanted to really document, you know, what was hemp used for and how did the cultures use it, that would be a good research project. Art history, a lot of the masters painted great paintings on hemp canvas, and they used hemp seed oil based paint. So it's really neat there. And one of the main uses of hemp over the years was for the cordage, for the ropes and sails on the sailing ships. Because back in the 1600s, sailing ships, that was the way we explored new continents and new worlds, and that was how a lot of the battles were fought on the ocean. So hemp cordage was very, very important. In the Civil War, there was a battle called the Battle of the Hemp Bales in Lexington, Missouri, where soldiers pushed hemp bales up a hill and they won the battle. So there's all these little hemp tidbits that are out there and that need to be discovered and further documented. But during the 1800s, the demand for hemp declined. You'll hear a lot of people say that hemp was like the most used crop, or the biggest crop in America historically, and that really wasn't true. We really didn't grow a lot of hemp in America in the 1800s. And by 1900, basically the hemp industry had died out on its own. So in 1900, there was very little demand for hemp, and there's no evidence of this big Hearst-DuPont Mellon conspiracy that you hear so much about with relation to reefer madness and why marijuana became illegal. They didn't know that hemp could be made into so many of these great products, but basically the demand for hemp declined and it died out. But then in World War II, the Japanese invaded the Philippines. They captured, and that took over the fiber supply for the Army and the Navy. So our government decided we need to grow hemp again. So they started this whole big Hemp for Victory campaign. And this is a couple soldiers guarding all the hemp seed. This is enough hemp seed to grow 350,000 acres of hemp. So it was amazing. And they did grow about 150,000 acres for a couple years during World War II in the Midwest, in Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. And there's still a lot of feral or wild hemp still growing out there in the Midwest. But we had this Hemp for Victory campaign, and then after World War II, they shut it off and basically made hemp illegal again. So there's all sorts of great hemp history out there that needs to be documented. If you're into geography or agriculture, there's a lot of things you could do in this area. This is a map of Europe from 1917, and every dot represents 1,250 acres of hemp. So you can see they grew a shitload of hemp in Russia, and they grew a lot of hemp in Italy. Most of the hemp that they grew in Russia, they used for cordage and ropes, whereas the hemp they grew in Italy, they processed it different, so they turned it into fabric, fine fabric, and linens. So it was very cool the way that is. But we need to understand, where did they grow hemp and where can they grow hemp? This is a map from 1970 showing the distribution of cannabis sativa. Of course, this is from a book called Selected Weeds of America, because according to the powers that be, cannabis is a weed. But you can see the distribution is basically the entire country, and we know that you can grow cannabis in California and Florida too, so it should even be bigger. But it's just amazing that you can see it's possible to grow it throughout the entire country. If you're into foreign languages or linguistics, cannabis, again, has been used by every culture on Earth, so everybody has their own different name for cannabis. Cannabis sativa. Sativa is the Latin word for useful. So cannabis sativa, useful plant. Now they call it the devil's lettuce. So it's like totally different, but it's all these different words. Canvas is actually derived from the word cannabis. So the Conestoga wagons that settled our western frontier were covered with canvas made out of cannabis. And this is a symbol, a Chinese symbol for hemp, or ma, which is what they call it. And what it is a shed with two plants, a male and a female cannabis plant hanging upside down to dry. So that's a very cool symbol, and I don't endorse tattoos. However, if you want to get one, that might be a cool one to get. So there's all sorts of different words for cannabis and hemp, and there's a lot of research and a lot of work that could be done in that area. If you're into biology or chemistry, there's all sorts of work you can do in that. The hemp stalk is a very complex stalk. It grows very tall, and there's this long bast fiber that runs the entire length of the stalk. So this really long, strong fiber, and then in the inside of the stalk are these woody herds, which is like a wood-like material. So, if you're in biology or chemistry, study this. This is 70% cellulose. So you can make all sorts of things out of cellulose, including fuel, concrete, and plastics. But we need more research into it. This is an actual electron microscope picture of the hemp herds, so you can see how porous it is and everything. But there's just a lot of different things that we need to understand. The composition of the hemp stalks, the composition of the hemp seeds, what are they made up of, and how can we utilize them? We have engineering. Thanks to prohibition, they've decimated the entire hemp industry. It's disappeared, and for 70 years there hasn't been any research or development into the engineering, into the machinery to harvest hemp and to process it. So if you're an engineering student, we need help in this area. You can see some old equipment that they used to process it, but there's a lot of really fertile parts in this area to do research into. Everybody wants to be green these days. Hemp is tremendous for this. There's so many great things about it. Hemp plastic, this is a great thing. You can make biodegradable plastic out of the hemp stalks. It's tremendous. You can make 3 different types of fuel out of hemp. Take hemp seed, crush it, take the oil, turn that into biodiesel. The hemp stalk, cellulose, can be turned into ethanol, and you can also compress the wood stalks into pellets for your wood burning stove. We've got a lot of wood burning stoves up here, so there's all sorts of different fuels you can make out of it, and that would be a good study to do. Show how much better hemp is than corn for making biofuels. A lot of automobile manufacturers they want to be green, they want their cars to be recyclable, so they're using a lot of hemp in their car parts. They're using it for the inner door panels, hemp fibers being used, and even for the outer panels. This is a Kestrel. It's an electric car that they're developing in Canada. The entire outside body is made up of hemp fiber. So it's just amazing what all the different things they're doing with it. Hemp is great for tree-free paper, so we can stop deforestation. And hemp paper is also good for recycling. The fibers in hemp herds are longer than wood fibers, so it can be recycled more times. So it's a lot of great things in that area. Phytoremediation. Hemp draws toxins out of the soil and stores it in the seeds. So that helps clean up polluted lands. And they passed a phytoremediation bill in Colorado. And they're actually growing hemp. They grew hemp in Colorado this year, which is amazing. And they actually harvested it last week. They had people, you could just go out in the field and pull up hemp if you help them harvest the field. So that was really cool. I'm really happy about that. But we need a lot more hemp harvest to go. Hemp shield, there's a new hemp shield is a lacquer type paint that you can put on wood. It's hemp seed oil based, so it's really environmentally friendly. And hemp grows really tall, really fast, so it blocks out competing weeds. So it takes a lot less pesticides and herbicides. So we need to document all of the environmental aspects of cannabis. If you're into construction, this is really going to be the big area. I've got a piece of hemp concrete right here. And this concrete is the inner herds of the stalk mixed with lime, sand, and water. And it makes a breathable, fireproof, pest-resistant concrete that actually sequesters CO2, so it has a negative carbon footprint. And this hemp concrete is really going to be the wave of the future. This is a large beer warehouse in England where they used hemp concrete for the walls, and it's saving a lot of money because of it keeps a more stable temperature, so they don't have to run the air conditioner all the time. So it's very efficient. And there's a new documentary called Bringing It Home, which is about a man. He's got a special needs daughter, and they decided to build a hemp house, a house made out of hemp, because it's healthier for his daughter. And this is a very emotional documentary, and we're having a showing here next month in Donahue. So come by. I think it's November 5th. So come out to that. We're going to have a lot of food and hemp samples and everything, and it's going to be a great little documentary. So you got hemp concrete, but you can also make particle board out of hemp. You can make insulation, carpet, shingles. So you really can build an entire house out of hemp. So if you're an architecture student or you're in construction, try to incorporate hemp into your projects, and that would be really helpful. Hemp is the superfood. It's the next new superfood, and you'll hear more about that on the news, or you might have heard more about it. And there's all sorts of great hemp foods out there. Hemp ice cream, chocolate hemp milk, hemp nut butter, shelled hemp seeds, which are really tasty. And hemp seeds are high in omega-3 and omega-6 essential fatty acids. You hear a lot about that on the news. That you're supposed to eat fish or salmon to get your omegas, but eat hemp. It's a lot better for you, and it's better for the fish too. So hemp's also high in protein, high in fiber, and it's gluten-free, cholesterol-free, and there are no known allergies to hemp food, which is really amazing when you consider how many people are lactose intolerant, can't eat peanuts, or they can't eat gluten. No known allergies. Why is that? I don't know. But maybe you could do some research and document that. It could have something to do with the endocannabinoid system, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So there's all these great hemp foods. And one thing everybody can do to help end prohibition is buy hemp foods. There's all sorts of, you can go to Whole Foods and get it. You can go to the Co-op on Mass Ave in Cambridge, have all sorts of great hemp foods. Go online, Google hemp. You can find all sorts of great stuff out there. So eat some hemp. Use hemp body care products. It's great for your skin. Hemp seed oil, the essential fatty acids act as emollients to moisturize and heal your skin. And it's so good for so many different ailments, eczema and psoriasis. The lip balms are really great. People love those. And there's all sorts of different shampoos, body lotions, soaps, and everything. And now there's even hemp ease, which is made out of the cannabis root. So it's made out of the root of the plant. It's really good for scrapes and burns. And hemp seed oil salves also are tremendous. So there's all sorts of great body care products out there. So you could, if you want to do a paper on dermatology or skincare products, hemp would be a great place to start. The economics of hemp. Economics is very hardcore, it's very complicated and sometimes boring. Well, why not study the economics of hemp? It's very, it's got a lot of different angles. And one of the first things I'll talk about is what I call a catch 422. It's like the chicken and the egg thing with the market, because we're creating an entire industry from the ground floor, from zero. That's very hard to do. And so there's no products out there. There's no market. And farmers are very conservative. They're not going to grow up crop unless there's a big demand and people want to buy their products. So it's very hard to jumpstart an industry. So that's part of the chicken and the egg thing. And then another reason that we're talking about, it's people will say, I would buy hemp products, but they're so expensive and I can't afford it. But one of the reasons they're so expensive is everything has to be imported. We can't grow hemp in America, so it all has to be imported from Canada, Europe, or China. And the economies of scale haven't kicked in yet. They're growing about 30,000 acres of hemp in Canada. So that's this little sliver right here, 30,000 acres. And then approximately 300 million acres of corn, soy, wheat, and cotton. So they're growing 10,000 times as much of these other crops than hemp. So the economies of scale means that the unit price for these hemp products is going to be a lot higher than competing products. So we need to grow a few million acres of hemp, and we'd see that price really plummet. So we need to understand that. We should look at the multiplier effect. I really think that industrial hemp can help revitalize rural America. If farmers could grow a crop, harvest it locally, sort of like this picture here, process it locally into a product and sell it, that money keeps getting spent over and over again locally, creating a multiplier effect, and it helps create a self-sustaining environment. And that's what a company called Hempola is doing in Canada. They're growing hemp, they're pressing the hemp seed oil, using the seed cake for food, and then they're using the hemp seed oil for biodiesel. And they're running the tractors in the farms. So they're getting two different uses out of that hemp, and it's really helping the local economy. So we need to understand the economics of hemp. We need innovation and entrepreneurs. We've got a lot of young, smart people here. I need you to invent a hemp product or start a hemp company. The sky is the limit. You know, the possibilities are endless. You can, whatever you want can happen, but it's going to be very, very difficult because, first of all, we're not even growing hemp basically in America, so that's a big roadblock. And we're starting everything from scratch, so you're creating new products from the ground floor, so you really have to be careful with that. But the possibilities are endless, and I just want to let you know, it is sort of like a war. This is a war of attrition, and like in a lot of battles, the first ones over the hill are the first casualties. So over the years, I've seen a lot of hemp companies come and go. Most of them have gone, unfortunately, because they didn't have good business plans and they weren't prepared for the harsh business environment. But if you have a good product and a good business plan, then you can go to town. This is a young man in California. He entered a contest. He won a contest by developing a hemp plastic water bottle, did a Kickstarter campaign, raised $17,000 to create prototypes. So there's a lot of different ways you can fund and source your projects, but just keep in mind all the different areas, and hopefully you'll make your billion and cut me in on a slice. We've got hemp products. Now we've got also medicinal hemp, cannabidiol. We all know about THC. That's a lot of fun and everything, and it's a great medicine. But CBD, cannabidiol, is from the flowers of hemp, and you can't get high. There's no psychoactive effect, but it's excellent for a lot of different things, for pain, for epilepsy, for nausea. So it's all these great things, and we're going to see medicinal hemp or CBDs is going to be huge. And now we're going to be talking about growing huge fields of hemp where they're making all these products and medicine. It's just going to be tremendous. So again, we're getting in on the ground floor. We're the tip of the spear. The tip of the spear is going to pierce the heart of prohibition, releasing the prisoners, opening our minds, cleaning our environment, strengthening our bodies. And so I need you all to be with me on this whole tip of the spear thing. And hemp is the green buffalo, which is what I like to call, because you can make all these great products. Native Americans survived. They used the entire buffalo to survive. They used the skin, they used the meat, they used the bones, they used the entire animal, hair, snoot, balls, and all. And you can use the entire cannabis plant to make all sorts of essential products. And that's why I call hemp the green buffalo. So we talked a little bit about hemp. Now we're going to talk about cannabis and medical marijuana. And just like hemp, because it's cannabis, it originated in China several thousand years ago, and it made its way across the planet. Recently, they found a mummified body in the Gobi Desert, 2,700-year-old body that was buried with 2 pounds of cannabis. So that was amazing, This must have been a very important person or a very lucky person. And, but what were they using that for? Was he a shaman? Was he a doctor or a healer? That would be a good research area to look into. In the 1700s, they used hemp seed oil and cannabis root for a lot of different skin ailments. And in the 1830s, William O'Shaughnessy, an Irish doctor, was in India practicing medicine. And he noticed in India that they were using cannabis for all sorts of things, for for spasms, for pain, for nausea. So he documented all these instances and took that back to England, and it became wildly successful. And by 1900, there were over 1,000 medicines that had cannabis in it. So it was amazing. It was very, very popular. But then starting around the turn of the century in 1900, the use of cannabis as a medicine started declining. And that would be another good research project. Why did it decline? There's a lot of different reasons. It could be, one, because it was hard to standardize the dosage of the medicine. Because in 1900, they didn't know what THC was. They didn't know what CBDs were. So it was very difficult to come up with a standardized dose. Also around that time, they had come up with different drugs like aspirin and opiates. So those were competing with cannabis. And around this time, the whole temperance movement started kicking into gear. So the whole alcohol temperance movement started gaining strength. And reefer madness, believe it or not, the first law against marijuana was made 100 years ago in California. So that would be 1913 or so. So it wasn't even in, 1937 was when the Marijuana Tax Act passed, but even in the 19-teens is when state laws against marijuana started propping up. So that whole reefer madness thing started going into effect in the early 1900s, and that probably had a big effect on why cannabis medicines started declining. Then you have the whole reefer madness thing in the 30s, and in the 40s, they actually removed cannabis from the pharmacopoeia. Pharmacopoeia is a book that has a listing of all the different drugs that are in use. They said, we're going to take it out of there, which is like, why? We want to put it back in. So if you want a project, help me put cannabis back in the pharmacopoeia. Medical biology, chemistry. There's so many different areas, things in this area that can be studied. There was a company up in Marblehead last year. They sequenced the genome, the cannabis genome. So there's all this data that can be analyzed and studied. We need to look into the endocannabinoid system, which some doctors say it's a literal link between your mind and your body. You have cannabinoid receptors all throughout your body, in your gut, in your brain, and cannabis interacts with those cannabinoid receptors, but we need to understand that better and do more research into that. We know there's over 50 cannabinoids have been identified. We've got THC, we've got CBD, but there's all sorts of cannabinoids. And if you discover your own cannabinoid, you get to name it. It's like naming a star. So you could call it tetrahydrocannabinol, which would be a great name for a cannabinoid. Tetrahydrocannabinol. It was hard. Glad I didn't mess that up. So, one doctor calls cannabis a synergistic shotgun because it does so much. It's great for nausea. They're finding out that cannabis helps treat or prevent or treat cancer. It actually helps fractures heal faster, which is amazing. So if you break your arm, smoke some pot. But it's also great for a lot of things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, which is good as our population gets older. And it's also good for head trauma, glaucoma, asthma. It's just amazing. And they're finding out that it's good for post-traumatic stress disorder, which a lot of our soldiers have. So if you care about our veterans, and I know you do, and you might know a veteran in your family, we need to work with them and the Veterans Administration to make sure they have access to this safe and effective medicine. Public policy. This is very important. Our government classifies cannabis as a Schedule I narcotic, which the definition of that is it's got a high potential for abuse, no currently accepted medical use, and lack of safety. All three of those things are total bullshit. But they make the rules, and that's what they say. And this is another catch-422. Our government says there's no research, so it's not good for you. So people say, I want to do research. There's people lined up around the block at the NIH, National Institute of Health, with grant proposals to do research. They want to do research. Can we do research? No. Why not? Because there's no research. So they use this circular argument to really jerk people around. And we need to fight it. There's a lot more research that's coming out overseas and in different countries and in America. But we need to turn this catch-422 on its ear. Even in Canada, they're putting in a new regulation that's going into effect in April, where they're taking away, for medical marijuana users in Canada, they can grow their own cannabis right now. They're taking the home grow option away from the patients, which is really bad. So even in what might be a more liberal place, they still keep putting rules and regulations in our way. We need to put THC back into healthcare. I don't know why, but that just sounds good, and I like the way it looks. And we also need to restart the investigational new drug program. These are 2 of the 4 people in America that receive cannabis from our government. Those are tins of 300 cigarettes, of marijuana cigarettes. They get that every month from our government. They mail it to them. Unfortunately, this is some of the worst, crappiest stems and seeds swag you've ever seen in your life. The government grows it down in a farm in Mississippi, and then they let it sit for like 10 or 15 years, and then they package it up and they send it to these people. So it's really horrible stuff. And then they say, here's your medicine, go away. But they're not going away. They're big activists, so they're really, sticking our government's nose in it. But we need to restart this program, or we need to start a new program where patients can get this cannabis, get good cannabis, to treat their illness and ailments, and to do more research. If you're in nursing or pre-med, public health, there's all sorts of different things, areas that we can look into. A lot of our critics say you shouldn't be smoking your medicine. Smoking marijuana, that's no way to take your medicine. That's just not right. Well, actually, smoking marijuana is perfectly fine way to take your medicine for some people, but it's not the only way. There's all sorts of different ways. You can use a vaporizer. Some people might have experience with a vaporizer here, or dabs, which dabs are good for people that are in intense pain and they really need relief really fast. So that's a great thing. Tinctures are good. Salves, medibles, where you eat it, and even eating whole cannabis, like taking the entire flower and just mixing it up and eating the whole flower. You don't get high from it, but it has these great therapeutic effects. There's people that swear by raw cannabis. So it's just amazing. There's all these different delivery systems, that which ones work best for which ailment. It would be a great project to do. Quality of life. Marijuana is safer than alcohol. There is no lethal dose to cannabis, to marijuana. You cannot smoke yourself to death. And I know some people that have tried, But seriously though, unfortunately, way too many people drink themselves to death. You literally can kill yourself with alcohol, and thousands of people overdose on pain pills, on aspirin, on pharmaceuticals. So it's amazing. So if you use cannabis to improve the quality of your life, if it helps you reduce your intake of other drugs, let your doctor know. You'd be amazed at how brainwashed doctors are. I've had doctors, 2 doctors in the last couple years, that will not even listen to me talk about marijuana. They say, oh, that's bad for you. It's horrible, And so we need to educate them. We need to let them know. So talk to them. Another thing our critics say is marijuana is a gateway drug. One puff, and boom, you're doing heroin the next day. And it's totally not true. Although I do consider marijuana a gateway drug, but actually it's a gateway away from heroin. It's a gateway away from alcohol and away from other debilitating pharmaceuticals and narcotics. So it's very safe and effective, and we need to talk about that. There's a lot of there's studies coming out now showing that people are using cannabis and getting off of other drugs and improving the quality of their life. It's really true. And then you have people, sometimes in the morning they'll have a hippie speedball, a cup of coffee and a joint before they go to work or go to school. And that's how they're self-medicating. They might be using it for depression, anxiety, or ADHD. And so it's perfectly normal for them to do that. They might not realize that they're self-medicating, but it's out there, and a lot of people do it. We studied the economics of hemp. We need to look at the economics of prohibition. Now this is a huge area. There's just pharmaceutical companies spend billions of dollars every year researching all these drugs, all these crazy drugs with a laundry list of side effects, while you can grow a safe and effective herb in your backyard for pennies on the dose. In Israel, they're providing high-grade medicinal cannabis to patients for $15 an ounce. So that's how much it costs to grow pot, $15 an ounce. So that's a good deal. And so we need to document that. You know, how much are we spending on developing drugs when we have this cheap and effective and safe drug right there? There's another catch-422. Our government makes the rules. So they say, okay, California, you guys have medical marijuana, but you can't deduct taxes for your dispensaries. You can't have access to, you can't get loans, no access to capital. You can't process credit card transactions. So imagine being a company where you can't do any of those things. It makes it so difficult to make money, even though the dispensaries in California are hiring hundreds and thousands of people and they're paying millions of dollars of taxes, but they're still hamstrung by all these regulations. So we need to understand that and fight back against that. Fortunately, in Washington and Colorado, where they legalized marijuana now, and the Department of Justice has said that they're not going to interfere with states, banks are starting to do business with companies in those states. So that, you know, we're starting to make progress, but it's going to be a hard fight. Our government is not going to give us anything easily. Everything we have to fight for, it's going to be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Every time we go somewhere, they're going to be pushing back on us because of this whole stigma. People just hate marijuana. We have to get them to love it. We need to document the custody industry. How much money is spent arresting people, putting them on trial, putting them in prison, doing drug testing, putting them on probation. Just billions and billions of dollars are wasted on this. We need to document that, and we can show people, let's save this money and use it for something else. We need to fight for our right to medicate in the workplace. Card-carrying medical marijuana patients are getting fired because they're failing drug tests. So this is another catch-422. We can't, if you're using this medicine, if you're not impaired, you should be able to use it while you're at work or before you're at work. But we need to fight for this. We need to look at the asymptotical relationship between the level of high and the frequency of use. And what this is, Dr. Grinspoon explained this to me several years ago. If you don't smoke very often, like you smoke once a month, you get really, really high. You might know people like that. They're like a cheap date. But if you smoke every day, your level of impairment is much lower. So we need to understand that, especially as it relates to the operating under the influence and driving cars, because the DUI, all these DUI laws are being developed now, and we have to make sure that just because you have 0.5 nanograms of THC in your bloodstream, that does not mean you're impaired. So we need to have good impairment laws, and we need to understand this asymptotical relationship. We need to look at philosophy and religion. If you like to think, or if you're into religion, some religions are based on marijuana, or they use cannabis as a sacrament. We need to understand that. We need to document that. A lot of great philosophers have used cannabis, and one of the great thinkers of all time, Carl Sagan, used marijuana. So if the smartest man that ever lived used marijuana, then why can't we? And a lot of ministers and religious figures are starting to come out and saying that prohibition is wrong because they see all the negative effects of prohibition, like Pat Robertson has actually come out. As crazy as he is, he has said that marijuana prohibition is wrong. So we need to leverage these people and get them to help us change the laws. If you're into music, theater, screen studies, there's a lot of different areas that you can apply in this area. Like, of course, everybody knows about Bob Marley and Willie Nelson. You know, cannabis has been a huge part of their life. But you could study how has marijuana and cannabis impacted other genres of music. There's a lot of great areas. Or you can look at screen studies and see how people are portrayed as cannabis users. It used to be Jeff Spicoli, Fast Times in Ridgemont High type. Every person that smoked marijuana was like this slacker, lazy bum. But now there's a lot of shows where marijuana use is incidental, sort of like Wilfred or bored to death, where they just smoke pot. That's just what they do. So it's not necessarily a negative thing. We need to document that. We need to understand it. Or you could look at different shows like there's a boardwalk show on HBO.
Boardwalk Empire?
Yeah. What was that?
Boardwalk Empire?
Yeah, Boardwalk Empire, exactly. That's about alcohol prohibition, but the similarities to cannabis prohibition are striking with all the violence and the money being made. So you could study that, look at that. Or if you want to put on a musical, there's a couple in Cambridge wrote a musical called the Caitlin County Hemp Wars. It's about a family that grows hemp to save their farm. Then they get arrested and they get in all this trouble. But it's a great musical, and it's got a lot of great songs and a fun story. So if you want to put it on, 2 or 3 people could put it on, or you can get 10 or 12 and do a full production of it. But they will come from Cambridge and work with you to produce this musical, and that would be an awesome thing to do. If you like to draw, why not draw? Create a hemp superhero. They could run around, fight prohibition, plant hemp everywhere. That would be awesome. Or you could, do all sorts of things. Create a game. Create some kind of video game related to cannabis. This is my lame-ass attempt to show the asymptote, sassy asymptote. But, there's a lot of different things. And I also work with a woman in Canada, Georgia Tunes, and I've worked with her on a couple comic ideas, and she also drew one of myself and Pam, my wife, and our cats, the cannabis curriculum. So there's a lot of different areas if you like to draw, And if you like to draw, but you're not sure what to draw about, let me know. I've got a lot of ideas. We can work together and put them in your school paper or wherever. That would be awesome. Women and gender studies. It's great. We got a lot of women here today, and we got Gabby and Skylar working with SUNORML, which is great because the reform movement in general has been male-dominated over the years, but now more and more women are getting into the movement, which is awesome. And we can understand, do some women's studies, like back during the Reefer Madness days, women were objectified, and it was like, if you smoke pot, all these bad things are going to happen to you. But then during the Hemp for Victory campaign, women were actually working in the hemp mills. This is in Minnesota. They're processing hemp fiber. So the women's movement has some of its origins were based on the Hemp for Victory campaign. So you could show, hey, this is how the women's movement got started. And now we have a lot of women's groups, Grandmas for Ganja. This is Magic out in Seattle. She's a great woman, although she lived here for a while. The NORML Women's Alliance, Moms for Marijuana. Moms are coming out saying, look, I want to smoke some pot after work. I don't want to drink. Marijuana has no calories, no hangover. So why can't I have a puff after work as opposed to a glass of wine? And so we need to understand that, document that, and join one of these women's groups too. Political science. There's all sorts of things you can look at in this area. You can look at all the different liberal places. Why is it that you can go to Amsterdam, walk into any number of coffee shops and buy high-grade marijuana or hashish and sit down and smoke it in a nice, quiet, peaceful environment? It's tremendous. Why can you do that? And then if you go to countries like Iran or China, you can be executed for smuggling narcotics. Why do we have different political systems like that? We need to compare and contrast different countries or even within countries. Why is California so much more liberal than Texas? It would be a great study to do. We need to look at the racial disparity in enforcement. African Americans are 4 times as likely to be arrested for marijuana than whites. It's horrible. This is America's apartheid. We've decimated our inner cities and communities of color, and it's based on prohibition. There's a new book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. It's a great book that documents this and details this. So we need to understand this, and we need to let people know that prohibition is a racist policy. We need to do legal studies. Suffolk has a law school. If we got any law students here, I need you to write a legal argument that proves that prohibition is unconstitutional. I know it's out there. I can't write that. But there's got to be some argument out there that we can prove that it is unconstitutional. Boom, prohibition's over. So that's your homework assignment. But if you can't do that, you can help with other groups. We've got NORML, SUNORML is great, but also Students for Sensible Drug Policy is another great group. LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, which is a lot of policemen and former cops that are going out talking about prohibition. And Vote Hemp, which is a hemp lobby. Vote Hemp is out there educating the public, and they need your support. So there's all these different groups that we can join, work with, and try to change these laws. Sociology. Is prohibition going to end? Is there going to be a watershed event or tipping point, which is a concept you hear a lot about? Or is it going to be a billion baby steps? Are we just going to incrementally go and change society, which is more than likely the way it's going to be? But, the camel does have its nose under the tent. People are realizing that legalizing marijuana does not mean the end of society. So we need to keep pushing that. We need to look at the stigmata and understand people are stigmatized about this, but we need to work against it. And remember, this is not a marathon. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't burn yourself out. The stigma is not going to go away overnight. Even if they legalized it tomorrow, there's still a lot of work to do, a lot of research in the medical area, a lot of hemp products to make, and a lot of the stigma to erase. So we need to understand that so you don't get burned out. And don't try to do everything. Just do whatever you can. And don't get mad at somebody else if they're not doing as much as you think they should be. So just do what you can. Every little bit helps. And care about apathy. Most people couldn't care less about apathy. But I do. I care about apathy. And hopefully we'll have the aha moment. Now this is my puzzle. The cannabis conundrum. Why can't we all just get a bong? But you have all these different groups, and everybody's like pulling in different directions. Hemp farmers are very conservative, so they don't want to legalize marijuana. They may not care about medical marijuana. They just want to grow hemp. They want to grow their product and sell it and make a profit. Patients are very passionate about their medicine. They love it, but they don't necessarily want it to be legal. And even in Washington State, there was a big no on 502. These were pro-cannabis people that were against this initiative. So it's very, that it's still passed, but that was one of the reasons that Prop 19 failed in California a couple years ago, because there was a lot of dispensary owners and growers that were anti. So we have to try to get on the same page. Even within the activist groups, there's a lot of fighting within groups and between groups. And there's what I call the tie-dyes versus the coat and ties. You have all the tie-dye, the original hippies, the long hairs, who did a lot for the movement. They started the movement many, many years ago, but now it's sort of been co-opted by clean-cut people, and a lot of them don't want to have anything to do with the long hairs. But we all need to work together, because we're a lot stronger together than we are apart. Another catch-422 is this whole institutionalized hypocrisy. A lot of teachers can't come out of the closet. They can't say they're pro-cannabis because they'll get drug tested. They may lose their job. They may lose custody of their children. So there's a lot of negative consequences. A lot of parents won't say that they like marijuana. I don't know, show of hands, but who talks to their parents about marijuana? Awesome. So and how many parents are positive? Like my parents are like totally negative. Maybe they're a little bit older and they're more brainwashed, so it's good to see that you at least talk to them about it, and I'm really glad to see that. But so we have this whole thing where we need to really come out and work together. Growers and dealers don't want marijuana to be legal because they're making a lot of money selling marijuana at these prohibition elevated prices. But in states where it's become legal, California, Colorado, for at least medicinal, these growers and dealers, now growers become caretakers. Dealers become providers. That sounds a lot nicer, provider, than dealers. So they are realizing they can work above the board in a legal manner. So it's starting, but we have a lot of work to do. Communication. This is one thing that everybody can do. We need to open the debate. They've owned the debate for 70 years, so we need to take the debate to them. Write letters to the editor. Go on talk radio. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. Talk to your professors. We need to let them know, because you cannot win a debate for prohibition. It's just not logically possible. There's no reason that patients shouldn't be able to get their medicine. There's no reason that farmers shouldn't be able to grow hemp. And there's no reason that Americans shouldn't be able to relax after work and responsibly smoke a little pot. It should be a right. So we need to take the debate to them. We need more people out there doing this. The activist community is very small, unfortunately, and we lost a person 2 days ago, Mike Malta, the king of pot, KOP. He passed away very suddenly 2 days ago, and it was just devastating. We need more people like him to help us. And we need to come out of the cannabis closet. It's hard to do that, but the more we come out and the more that we're proud cannabis consumers, people will see that we're normal people. So the answer to the question is, why can't, this is like a Jeopardy, it's backwards. Why can't farmers grow hemp? Why can't patients get their medicine? Why can't I relax with a joint after work? It's the prohibition, stupid. Prohibition is the key phrase that we need to, or the key concept that we need to keep driving home and make people realize that prohibition is not going to work, it cannot work, and it will not work. Hemp is the answer. I'm not sure what the question is. This is me and my wife in the Hemp Industries Association in 1999 up in Canada. This was the only hemp field that I've ever been in. Hopefully I'll be in another hemp field in the near future in America. And I'm going to end with a quick poem. It's called C is for Cannabis. C is for the cannabinoids that heal us. A is for the architecture that shields us. N is for hemp's nutritious foods, soaps, and lotions. N is for innovative products that keep us in motion. A is for the arts that entertain us. B is for the biofuels that sustain us. I is informing others of hemp's utility. S means shopping can end prohibition's futility. H is hempen cordage sailing through history. E is for hemp's environmental efficiency. M is the economic multiplier to optimize. And P is for the politics needed to legalize. That's the ABCs of the cannabis curriculum. Thank you very much.